webinar, and we'll be making that available after the webinar in the next couple of days. So Fergus, it's all yours.
Thanks, Dara, and hello everybody. My name is Fergus Ashe, and I'm a principal within Screendragon, and I hope I have lots of little nuggets of advice and experience to share with you today, because I've spent the last 10 years of my career helping all types of brands and different agencies around the world scale their operations, leveraging different workflow processes and implementing technology to support teamwork. I've done that for the likes of Kellogg, Procter & Gamble, Kimberly-Clark, and from an agency perspective, WPP agencies like JWT, Group M media agencies, etc. But to prevent this session today from becoming a sort of a tech geeky session where I'm navel-gazing at Screendragon technology, I've invited someone with a bucket load of experience when it comes to the people side of things and the cultural side of things, and how do you achieve behavior change when you're looking to scale brands across different borders and cultures. So, well, welcome Jessica, and thanks for accepting my invitation to present with me. So say hello.
Hello, hello.
And a few words about Jessica, just to give you a bit of background, is Jessica has spent, I think, the last 10 years of her life also, and her career, working in coordination roles on an agency side within these sort of connected teams. So take a very large software company or CPG, etc., and they need to coordinate activities across all different teams within agencies and within the brands themselves. Jessica has been that focal point, that sort of person who's trying to make sure that everybody works efficiently and in a lean way. So that has meant that she has also spent the last 10 years changing a lot, in particular changing houses. So correct me if I'm wrong, Jessica, but I think you've lived in Amsterdam, Beijing, Seattle, Helsinki, London, and Munich. Any other city to add to that?
Yeah, other cities to add, but that was just the last 12 years.
Yeah. So she's certainly an expert in change management, at least when it comes to changing houses. So that's a little bit about us, and on to the agenda of today. So Jessica's going to take on the first part of the session, and she's going to be talking about the challenges she's seen and experienced as supporting global managers and global brands. She's going to give us sort of real life stories of things that have happened, and then we're going to come on to a more practical session, the 3 pillars of brand operations, when I'm going to come in and I'm going to layer systems thinking onto some of the points that Jessica's going to be bringing up. So that's when you'll begin to see a bit of software. But what I think is important about today's session is that we recognize the importance of the human part of things. I'm the technology guy. I've lived technology for the last more 15 years or so, but I'm the first to recognize that with any successful implementation of Screendragon, it's been about the mindset, the human part. How can we achieve change management within the organization and aligning people? Otherwise, technology is going to fail. So we, as a company, spend a lot of time with our clients up front talking about process change, human change, before we even get to the bits and bytes. So with that, I think that's a good segue, Jessica, into your part of today's session, where you'll talk to us about your experiences in that area.
Thank you, Fergus. So as a global manager, which I'm assuming you all are, you have this central role, and as Fergus was outlining, a lot of it is platform, and there's a lot of conversation about the framework that we want to implement to make everybody more connected, collaborate more, and obviously deliver better results as a global team. But a big part of it is to start with what are our challenges and what are our objectives at the central line. So a few of the anecdotal information that I distilled of what I often hear is that we should obviously be more connected. Now, this doesn't just pertain to having more conference calls, but we have to find a way to not scramble around every time we want to figure out what's happening in the markets, or for local markets to understand what's really going on at global. Another one is about visibility. And I think we all know how painful it can be to be asking local teams for status updates, but it's like herding cats, really. And I think the combination of technology and people, and some human connection is what's really going to work and make that happen. The local markets feel like global doesn't get it. I mean, how often have we heard that? Creative not being applicable in the market. I can't translate the tagline, or the imagery is offensive, and obviously deadlines don't move. So we have to find a way to see how we can eliminate this feeling and actually get local markets on board up front. And then an aspect that is becoming bigger and bigger, from what I've seen, is the cost savings. And not only cost savings by leveraging best practices, but by all means, how can we make sure that we're not reinventing the wheel every time that we start a new campaign, or every time that we start a new initiative, and that we can actually learn from each other. So I'm hoping this sounds familiar to you as well. Because one of the things that I see when I talk to any multi-location organization is that we need to, first of all, put the right behaviors and the right rhythm in place for this to happen. And whether it's 5 locations or 100 locations, I've noticed it is possible to take the frustration out of communicating across cultures, and to really get to build on top of the team's strengths, the local teams, and obviously also the global team and talents. Now, the disadvantage for me on the webinar format is that I can't really get to know you and know your exact challenge. And I'm sure you've also implemented things and have certain objectives that you might want to share. So you can definitely use the chat box, and Dara will monitor the questions. And as he said, we'll go through the questions a little bit later at the end, but comments are welcome. So looking at my experience, one of the case studies that I wanted to outline was when I was relocated from Asia to the US, I was asked to set up a global operations framework for the agency of record on a big software brand. And we just won the account, and it was going to grow from, well, 0 basically to over 100 million in the next few years. And one of the main objectives from both the brand side as well as on the agency side was to increase visibility, is to really understand who is working on what at what time. And it goes both ways, the visibility of the knowledge flowing from global to local, but definitely also from local to global. And I would add to that, one of the challenges I imposed on myself was, hey, we also need to have local to local, peer to peer, better visibility. So even though I was super excited, I was a little bit overwhelmed by the scale of what I was responsible for. But one of the key insights that I took from having managed a regional production team in APAC, was that the talents of the local markets are, you can't ignore those. You have to actually elevate those and understand that the success of the local teams really is the big contributor to the global success, to the all-up success for the global branding or the global marketing implementations. So it meant that we wanted everybody to have the same mindset, and we wanted people to see that global and local are not enemies, and in fact global needs local to succeed. So this is where we onboarded people in a way that we introduced this common culture, language, and then we realized how are you going to keep the relationship strong if you're going from maybe a couple of hundred people who first had to talk to each other across different markets now into thousands of people? And this is exactly the challenge that I imagine you have on a daily basis. So one of our key pillars there of success factors was that I introduced connectors. I called them connectors or global coordinators in each major time zone. And not only were they a conduit for the information that was flowing from global to local, they were also a filter of what was really relevant for that market or that region. So here again, we see there's a human aspect that needs to be in play besides the technology or the platform as is. And vice versa, the information flowing from local up to global or within the region or amongst regions, it was a very personal insight of, okay, this is a golden nugget that needs to be elevated, that needs to be highlighted. And as these people, the connectors, they actually built a relationship with all of the local teams and the team members there. It was a much more natural flow and less of the herding cats that we usually get. And obviously, as we grew, we were able to put more technology and more automation into the workflow. But yeah, I'd say I checked in the other day, and now 10 years later, there are still people dedicated to coordinating the markets and getting this knowledge transfer to flow. So another interesting case study was focusing more around cost, and this is for brands and teams that have a little bit less budget to set up these coordination points, because the main objective was to optimize the digital marketing budgets globally. And so we really needed to be smart about how the agency was leveraging offshoring, what was done centrally, how about cascading down the big idea and the campaign assets, the campaign toolkit. One of the frustrations, obviously, that it caused was that a lot of the budget, which otherwise would have been allocated to local teams, was reallocated to the central production hubs. So we found a way to balance that. And what we wanted to do is to get the local teams to really feel like they still had a voice and they were still valuable in their local innovation, because they have a lot of great ideas as well. But how do you do that if you're finding out that some of these markets, once they go under the radar, they come up with some pretty wild executions? And I know I shouldn't be saying this, but as an agency, we once had a situation where we were in a quarterly business review, a creative review, and there were some of the executions which were so off the grid that, I mean, it would have caused an absolute shitstorm if we would have actually shown them. So we had to hide them, but we realized there is a problem. We need to align our markets, and we need to especially focus on those usual suspects, the markets that are always going off course. So in turning this around, we actually said, let's try to make network leverage an incentive for people, because we wanted to make visible, again, what were the local markets doing and kind of being able to nip it in the bud before it became full-blown creative. And to do that, we incentivized them, we encouraged them that if they would come up with local creative that really, really worked and that was on brand and fell within the framework, we would we would pay for them to develop and deploy this for other markets as well, who signed up for getting exactly the same best practice and the same assets, being able to leverage from them. So this, to make a long story short, after a while, it really did work. We had people showing up on the creative, or showing their creative on the status calls and wanting to burst in talking about what they were doing locally, because then maybe other markets would be signing up for that one as well. And so we did some small changes to the status calls, and in general, we adjusted the rhythm of the calls and the meetings to better benefit the local markets, even in terms of time zone. And we switched the agenda around to have the local teams present what they're working on and what their results and impact on their local campaigns was before we actually came up with our global updates. And the visuals from these status calls were repackaged because they would give them to us anyway, and we made some really neat, highly visual reports that went to all of the global and local marketers and got us into the visibility as well. So I can say that for this client, a struggling mobile phone manufacturer in the Nordics, we did end up tracking and saving network leverage cost savings of about $2 million, euros a year for a couple of years, which was great. Now, another pet peeve of ours is to demonstrate the human aspect of coordinating global operations is that if we as global teams are not providing the right information at the right time, markets again are going to go off and do their own thing. We want to avoid this tension, and this is another insight that this is the same insight that a Canadian global food company had, and they have about 50 offices worldwide. And one of the things that they implemented to improve global connectivity was to focus on making the technology and the framework obviously global, but to really let go of the communications and add within the workflow a whole section, a whole portion of localization was owned by local. So this type of empowerment for some traditional organizations seems completely counterintuitive. But what we did find is that it increased the accountability that the local teams had, and it made them much more cooperative and actually think with the global strategy and objectives much more than before. And because global was actually adding value to the local marketers, you could really bring them in and loop them into the change that we needed to do. And it all sounds so easy. And everybody here on the phone knows it's not. But I also know that it's worth it. And one of the lessons of this implementation is to acknowledge that there is a painful moment today, but you're doing it for a reward and a better situation tomorrow. So on that note, I wanted to introduce the fat smoker and the green dot. So the fat smoker is after a book, The Fat Smoker and Strategy and the Fat Smoker by a man named David Meister. And he takes on his own example of being overweight and smoking a pack a day. And he says, you know what you need to do if you're in that state, and you know you need to change your ways and you need to become healthy. And you can go to a doctor and you can say, all right, doctor, what should I do? And the doctor will say, well, you need to stop smoking and you need to eat more healthy foods and exercise more. And he knows all that. And I think similarly, we, in our challenges, we kind of know what to do, but it's making the commitment and having the motivation to actually do it and to go through this usually kind of struggle of change is something that we need to sign up for and commit to. And that can be exemplified by the different people who you either have on board on your team or the ones who are on the fence or the ones who are absolute naysayers. And in change management, there's an interesting analogy here with the green dots. So the green dots are the people who they see the change needs to happen, they're proactive, they probably give ideas of how we can improve and how we can change as well. And we really want to rally these people behind us when we're embarking on such a change. Then there's obviously the red dots. And the red dots are the people who don't even think that something should change. Probably they're happy with the way things are, they don't see anything broken, they're definitely not going to help you or be proactive or add any extra energy into the change that you want to achieve. So let's move away from the red dots, because putting our energy on these people is not going to be a good use of our time. But besides the red the green dots, we also have the yellow dots. And that's a group of people that we really, really want to focus on. Because getting the yellow dots converted to green dots, that will give us the quorum that we need. And often the yellow dots are the ones who, once they have converted to green dots, they actually are in a better situation or in a better position to influence the red dots to maybe turn to yellow and hopefully turn to green at some point.
Wow. You're hopeful, Jessica. You're hopeful.
I'm super optimistic. That's just me. You have to be. All right. So when we look at implementing connected and collaborative teams, there's a few pillars that I think we should focus on to rally it around. And the first of that, is rhythm. The other one is output, which you could see as reports, but I see it as a little bit more than just reports. And then people. We've spoken about all three of them, and we're going to dive a little bit deeper into all three with some examples that Fergus has. So I like the word rhythm. Maybe it's because I was born on a tropical island in the Caribbean. But in any case, the rhythm for me means that you bring consistency into how often you connect, and you look at what everybody can expect from each other. So it's also transparency, and it's critical, in my opinion, that this is defined jointly. It's not just global saying, all right, this is the time schedule, this is how often I want you to get on board. No, it's something that you want to keep lean and relevant, and you definitely want to have the input from your local team members on that as well. So Fergus, you might want to take over controls now.
I'm going to, for the folks on the phone, we're going to do a quick switch of baton because I'm going to share with you some practical case studies and experience that we've experienced from a technology side and how we've helped bring rhythm where there was no rhythm before. So let me just go full screen here. And Dara, are you seeing my screen?
Yep, everything's good.
Okay, perfect. So the story I'd like to tell here, it's about a client of ours called Kimberly Clark, and it's about finding rhythm in how you work internally but also externally with your partners. And we've been working with them for a long time, but about 3.5, 4 years ago, they were working in a very disconnected, out of sync way. And that was, as a integrated team, let's say working on a Huggies brand, you would work with lots of different partners, lots of different agencies, and you'd work with shopper marketing internally and shopper marketing externally, etc. But they were engaging with these different partners in a very one-to-one way. So if they're working with a JWT or an Ogilvy, they would be going and picking up files from that agency and picking up an Excel timeline from another one and copy-pasting it together to get to one integrated timeline and one vision of how they're going to deliver on the campaign plan. And that was incredibly inefficient and incredibly frustrating. So in collaboration with them and looking how we could improve things, we came to the solution whereby we totally flip it, and we said, you know what, these walls or these silos of systems and ways of interacting, they're bad for everybody. So why don't we create one place for everybody to collaborate? And let's go further. Let's create a vernacular, a way of talking about our workflows. And we said, okay, that's one voice for the team. Have visibility, a directory of everybody who's working together, one team, and then one process as well, so that if you're sending something for legal approval or it's got a flow in a certain way, that everybody understood the steps by which work will get through the organization. So they called it the fridge, because the fridge, everything should be fresh and new that's in the fridge, and it transformed the way they worked between agencies and between agencies and the teams. So I'm going to show you a demo system that we've branded in the Ford colors. Ford is not a Screendragon client, to be clear, but it'll give you an idea of the type of system that we implemented in this case and in many other cases. So it's really Screendragon out of the box, but in this case with lovely Ford blue colors. We just like the blue colors here. So I'm going to sign in, and this is on the cloud, as everything is nowadays. And we're going to go into a marketing system here of an individual user and looking at what they should do within the system here under tasks and actions. But today I'm going to focus on more the visibility aspect, because Jessica was talking about having line of sight. So how do we help organizations like Kimberly-Clark, Kellogg, P&G and others get line of sight? Well, we create very smart portfolio views on all the work going on within the organization. So this is your modern Excel sheets. So Excel sheets are great, but they have enormous problems in terms of version management, who's updated this last, who's it with, etc. Whereby if you centralize that and everybody updates the same thing, the same cells online, then we're all looking at the latest source of information. I think they call it the single source of truth is the fancy term it's called now. So we're looking at one dashboard here, but we can toggle to look at different things. So for example, if we wanted to look at where work is and where it's blocked, we could go into a different view of it to help out there. If we wanted to bring back different data about our projects and say, okay, I'd like an executive view, and that's going to bring back vendor names and expenses and other information, you can do that. You get the idea. You can bring back all the different parts and jobs that are happening in the organization with a click, like what I've just done there. So, but if you want to dive deeper and figure out, well, where are we and what's the process, then we go into one particular project. So I'm going to click into this demo project here called Fergus project. Now click into that, and then you're going to see a stage gate system. Okay, this is what we do with clients in terms of introducing that one voice. We want to introduce workflows that are understood by everybody. We do that as best we can using a visualization of the process. In this case, discovery, concepts, develop, and deliver. But it really could be anything here. That's completely dynamic. And then what happens in the case of that Kimberly-Clark case, they started collaborating against their process. And then all the files of all the different partners were here, and people could see work and lift work and collaborate and contribute to new ideas. So all of that there on the cloud, permissions controlled, and everybody gets in and does the work. If you happen to want to manage resources and go even deeper in project management, we have clients that even get into resource planning. And that is saying, I would like visibility on who's doing what in the organization, on what they're planned in to do, and then you could even look into utilization and capacity planning if you want to go that far. But I'll leave it there in terms of this this demo of this system, because I'll talk to you about another aspect of rhythm with a case study on, I think it's in this case, let me see, I've got to move it here, Kellogg's, yes. So this is a system that has radically improved how work gets approved before it goes to market all across the globe. They call it communications clearance and compliance. And again, it's about how do we find new flow, new rhythm in the way we work. Previously, when things were going from local and having to get approved at a local level, but perhaps being escalated up to regional or global for approval, that was all very manual, lots of meetings, complicated triage, no sort of automation to it. So a few years ago, working very closely with them, we really worked on a smart way to do this. Using sort of algorithms, business rules, we came up with a system whereby a local brand manager or their agency that was empowered could submit the work that they wanted feedback on and approval on to this sort of smart routing system. And that routing system would decide on what subject matter expert have we got in the organization that could give feedback on this, and should we involve legal, and do we involve the nutrition people because this happens to be something about a particular foodstuff or whatever. So it was really, really intelligent on who it would involve and when it would involve them. So you could see that as sort of the just-in-time of marketing approval, the kind of the Toyota way. Well, that's what it did here, and in the end, they're getting way more efficient approval of work going through the organization, which ultimately saves them a lot of money and a lot of time and frustration. So that's doing a rhythm around approval of work. So Jessica, output.
Yeah, the output is, again, it's all about relevance. So this comes in seamlessly into this topic, where I see the task to really define like a minimum viable product of reports instead of the massive amounts of reports that people spend their time on, that they could be spending time coming up with great impactful campaigns. So trying to find that minimum the pieces of information that will not only cater to you as a global team, but in an ideal world would cater to a multitude of stakeholders that all want to see a similar type of feasibility and results. So it's all about not only what we share with the teams, but how we share between the teams. So, for instance, focusing on from the local teams to get creative and campaign results, and maybe some of the financial information that we need, but then leaving it at that and not muddling it up with other requests that we have constantly. Trying to reduce Excel is a big pet point for me, and trying to make it more simple and obviously more visual, trying to put more images in it and make it a little bit more enticing. But from the global side to the markets, it's really, really important that we can continuously share the strategy and the objectives, so that nobody in the local market feels like they're blindsided. And sometimes it becomes a little bit repetitive, but it's definitely an empowerment play that I've seen. Is the more you share, the more transparent, and the earlier you can share, the better it is for the local teams.
Okay, thanks, Jessica. So let me expand on that from a systems perspective, because we've seen and done a lot in this area as well in terms of sharing output. And this is something that I read and respected. I think it was done about 2 or 3 years ago. It was a big study done by Millwood Brand Vermeer called Marketing 2020, where they were benchmarking marketing organizations around the globe, and then they put them into buckets of overperformers and underperformers, and what the characteristics were for the overperformers. And I just pulled out one here, but there were many in this same similar area. But it says here, it's clear what the strategy is for the brand I'm working for. And the brands that were really overperforming, there was a high percentage there that were delivering on that. That means they were sharing, they were communicating down in a very consistent and clear way with their regional and with their local. So what are the techniques to do that? How can you do that? Well, certainly you can do it with face-to-face, and that should always be a part of it. But with costs of travel and time for travel, often you need a secondary sort of platform to help you share your strategy, your objectives, the great work that's happening within the organization. So that's what we help organizations do as well. But rather than saying, okay, go and build a simple SharePoint site or set up a shared drive and we'll drop the files into those boxes, we like to think that a brand would approach it in a more strategic, more sophisticated way. And that's what we've done for several. And this is just a visualization of a visual sort of strategy where you set the objective, what you want to achieve with this brand management platform, and in this case, nurture and enhance your people and your work. and then you set your strategic objectives. We're doing it to grow our brand. We want to develop our people, and we want to shape our future. So that you do, but then you've got to link your content strategy behind that. So you set up these sharing platforms, but who's going to share the content? What content have you got? And you see, in this case, I've set up a sort of idea of a schedule for content, but mapped it to the strategic objectives. And I think you do that, I'm sure, for your content marketing and your social. You're linking it back to the objectives for your brand. You should do it likewise when you're sharing internally, because it will work out way better. What does that look like, those platforms? And Jessica mentioned that it should be engaging, it should be visual. Well, we've done very, very visual things over the years. These are just some examples of our work over the years. This was for the Herbal Essence brand, obviously incredibly visual. This is something that we're doing right now for Pringles in terms of sharing their equity and packaging and TV copies and whatever, so people can see it and learn from it. But it gives you an idea that this is not set up an FTP site and they will come. This is about taking this seriously to deliver great work and showcase some of the great things happening within the organization. And I think that's a nice extension into the people area, where Jessica, you've got a few words to say on that too.
Yeah, I mean, I say we put it last, but it's certainly not least. The connectors we spoke about, the people, the human aspect, and I want to reiterate the commitment that we need with the people to join in and make the change. Another thing to consider there is that everybody does have a role, that they feel they have a purpose and a part to play within this change. So these, as soon as you're a green dot, basically, you will have a role assigned and you can contribute. And again, it's about empowerment. We can't just throw stuff over the fence and expect people to pick it up. As a global team, I really think we have a responsibility that we can make people learn from each other. We're the facilitators for people to share, and we provide that platform. So things like the tools that we can implement at a global level, as well as training and making sure capabilities and talents in one place are leveraged across the rest of the world or the other teams. That's our role, and we provide that for the people as people. If that makes sense.
Yeah. So on that, you have these brand platforms, and you no doubt have these get-togethers where you're sharing case studies. But how do you keep the dialogue going, and how do you keep the learning experience going? And how do you make a learning experience that's not so dry online that nobody will ever go to it? They're all the challenges. So we've looked at those challenges to see how can we create marketing systems that offer a personal learning journey, so that when you visit a digital channel to further your learning about the brand or deepen your skill set, that it feels personal, it feels like it's relevant for your career path. And you can do that in a smart way by meta tagging content when you're managing content within a brand management system, so that when you're uploading equity pyramids or strategy decks or competitor research, that you tag it saying, okay, this is for this level of brand managers, for the senior brand manager, for the junior brand managers, for the marketing director, etc. And when they come to the website and the brand portal, we're able to deliver up the right content for them at their point in their career. So we do that, as you can see here, in a very, very visual ways. Here's just one sort of experience. There can be loads of different ways of doing this, but I'm just showing you this one. This one is from Kellogg, this one is from BP. And of course, we want to interrelate content. In the same way in the consumer experience, that you have sort of at the end of one experience, you have, and further reading here, or here's related content. That's what you expect in your life as a consumer. when you're reading the news, you get interconnected news. Well, we wanted to bring that sort of experience into brand systems as well, so that we extend the time that people are learning and educating themselves. So that's really what we wanted to share with you today. We're, I think, running out of time, but Darragh, we're going to be handing over to you in a minute now for any questions that have popped up. But I thought this was a very relevant quote to leave you with, because certainly I've experienced this, and I started off the session by highlighting it, that it's all about the mindset of the people you meet and their openness for change. But the reality is, and I think we all buy into this, with the disruptive nature of society today, you have to keep on changing. Even if a change fails, you have to try changing, because just standing still isn't going to work out, and your competition will outpace you, and in the end you'll be chasing your tails. So I thought this, I think he's Irish too, George Bernard Shaw, I think it's a very nice quote. Progress is impossible without change, and those who cannot change their minds cannot change anything. So with that, Jessica, I'd like to thank you and open it up for questions.
Thanks, Fergus. There are a few questions after coming in, but just to say to the attendees still on the line, if anybody does have anything they'd like to ask, please feel free to type it into the chat box and I will ask it. The first question here is from Adam, and I think it's more about what you were talking about, Jessica, even though Fergus, I think you'll have some examples here too. You talked about communication of the vision and strategy between global and local teams. What does that look like? Is it more regular status meetings? Is it email, or is it take the form of a SharePoint site?
Well, I've noticed that the most impact, obviously, you'll get face-to-face. If you can get together in an off-site, that's the ultimate get together, and it really sinks in, and people get the chance to feed back to senior leadership and all of that. But if that's not an option, I would say the next level or the next channel through which to communicate that is not necessarily PowerPoints attached to an email, and if you can do it on a video conference, that's also pretty impactful and powerful. And if that's not possible, then at least I would encourage is record it on video. Create a 4 or 5 minute video where the CEO or the CMO or the strategist is actually talking through that approach, because it will give more impact. That's something that you think it happens once and it sinks in. I would say don't be afraid to be a bit repetitive when it comes to remember, this is the core statement coming out of our vision, and make sure people keep rallying against it or behind it, because yeah, it should be a bit of a mantra that everybody's working with.
I think that's a really good idea. Those little video nuggets, I've seen that work really well in some of our clients. We had that system that I mentioned there, that Kellogg system. The senior legal counsel for Kellogg and the CMO got together, sat themselves down, got the camera out, and did a lovely little video of themselves and the purpose of why are we doing this, and how will this new process help us and our consumers eventually. And it really rallied the troops and helped enormously with the adoption of the system. So hey, video is the new sort of candy. People like it. They much prefer it to reading documents, so use it.
Okay, thank you. And you mentioned there about senior leadership. So this question is relating to that whole idea of change management. What if there are red dots at an executive level within the organization? Do you have more examples of significant returns on investment that could convert them to green dots?
Yeah, I mean, if I would have to.
You take it. I've got
yeah. I mean, to be perfectly blunt, if senior management is a red dot, you're pretty much screwed, because they really need to be able to push the agenda of change. They need to be an exemplary, leading by example. It's all true from my experience. However, there are situations where more of a grassroots success can lead to conversion of these red dots, even at a senior level. And that really means that somebody needs to be maverick enough to say, well, in my department or in my team, I'm going to make these changes, and look at how smooth we've become, and look at how what the success stories are that we've achieved, and then try to again rally in as many yellow dots as you can to at some point reach those red dots who you have to have on board. Or sometimes they go away. That's sometimes a good scenario as well. So that's my experience.
There's a high turnover of senior leadership, so you can always wait for that red dot to leave.
Yeah.
My experience actually is the same. You can have grassroots, and actually, if you look at cloud software, that often starts at grassroots and goes up. And they talk about that with the sort of CIO and the bring your own device, or the way small things start and they grow up, and eventually the CIO will take it on and it will become official. On the marketing side, my experience is typically the CMO or the senior leadership do have a vision. They are open to change. They realize that. It's how do they mobilize the organization. That is typically the harder thing to do, and they're looking to win over hearts and minds. So they're actually looking for help, and ROI helps them, but actually their troops on the ground don't particularly care about ROI. Leadership do. They care about, does this help me? Can I get my stuff done faster? Can I get home to help the kids earlier? Will I be less stressed? So if you can prove that your way of working or the system you're introducing will improve their professional life, then you're onto a good thing.
Okay, thank you. There is a question here from Dana. You talked about how important it is to nurture and harness the creativity of local teams. In your experience, do each team develop their own rhythm and way of working, or is that very much set at a corporate level?
Well, if you let them, they will develop their own rhythm, obviously. I would say if you have the right people in place at corporate who can manage this, who can be a little bit flexible about the different dynamics that are coming from the different countries, then you can still keep an overview and a collective rhythm as a global organization, even if some of the people are stepping a little bit out of the beat. And this often happens with a smaller market versus a larger market, or a market that has higher priority than another market, or a cluster of countries that are together a market. So there's going to be some off-sync happening. And again, the more you can try to make it easy for the local teams to participate and join in on the bigger, the collective rhythm, the more success I think you can get.
Okay, thanks, Jessica. I have one more question here, and I think this is more geared towards you, Fergus. It's from Tom, and he says, I was really interested in the idea of breaking down the communication silos as per the Kimberly-Clark case study. Do you have any insights as to whether this holds true across other communication teams, such as corporate comms or employee comms?
I guess they're getting at, is it just restricted to that part of the greater communications world within inside an organization? No, the same I think holds true for corp comms as much it does for the marketing department. It depends, of course, on the sector. Some corp comms are small, and then you go into a different industry, they're very, very big. But I think you could look at this more holistically. And you could say, why wouldn't we come up with an umbrella system? Because we should all be adhering to our brand values. and why would we differentiate between corp comms and marcoms? So I think there is an argument for even breaking the wall between those down so that you can create real value-based communications across both departments, if they still are both two departments.
Okay, thanks. That is the last question here. So I think we're about ready to wrap things up. We're running out of time.
Okay, thank you, Dara, for being the moderator. And Jessica, thanks very much for sharing your learnings and your practical experiences over the years. On the next webinar, we'll get productivity tips in house moving. I think you've probably got real good.
I've got loads of checklists and best practices there too.
How to pack boxes, the lean way.
Ah, you let it be done by someone else. All right. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, everybody. We will be sharing this on via email if you'd like to hold on to part of it. So thanks for your time today. And until next time. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.